welcome back. This is the Atlanta Sports Podcast. We are very excited to start episode 15. A little bit later on, we're going to be joined by Drew Collins from SportTalk.com. As this is our Braves review show, we're going to be talking much more about the Braves than we have in recent episodes. But for you college football fans and NFL fans, we are going to get into those a little bit later on at the end of the show. But first, we want to thank you for finding us, whether it be on our website, atlantasportspodcast.com, or on Twitter, where you can always follow us at ATL Sportscast to stay updated on the latest news surrounding the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia sports teams. You can also find us on iTunes. You can leave us a review there. You can let us know how we're doing. We'd love to hear from you. You can also send us an email or contact us from our website. So we're going to get started with the interview with Drew Collins. Again, he's from SportTalk.com. Now I am very happy to be joined by Drew Collins from SportTalk.com. And Drew, we're glad to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So we're going to start off, what did you like most about the 2016 team? Now that the season's over, we can look at the whole body of work. What part did you like the most?
Yeah, looking back, it was a long road, but definitely after the second half, we picked it up a little bit, brought some players up as well as signed some new players such as Matt Kemp. But I really like the fact that the Braves never conceded, and they were always trying to win, never trying to do anything else. Especially in the last series of the season, we played the Tigers, who were trying to make it to the playoffs, and we were able to stop them. We won the series, took 2 games from them, and I really thought that was a big thing for the Braves, how we fought till the very end, and especially winning our last game at Turner Field was really exciting to watch.
Right, and now they can take some of that momentum into next year, hopefully, and lead it into more wins next year, and then eventually to contend for a playoff berth.
Exactly. I think with the team we got now, get one full season under their belt, definitely be an improved team next season.
So with the Braves suffering losing seasons the last 2 years, the focus has been on the prospects the team has traded for during the team's rebuild. Which prospect that hasn't quite made it to the majors yet do you like the most?
Well, there's a couple I got for you. There's one position player in mind that I'm sure everyone's heard about is Ozzie Albies. He's a 19-year-old second baseman, so shortstop, but we're probably going to play him primarily at second because of Dansby. He's the number 12 prospect on MLB.com, and he also led the Southern League this year and with an average of 321. He did get hurt in their playoff game this year, but he's expected to be back for spring training, and I think he'll be a really exciting prospect to watch alongside Dansby Swanson. Also, we got one more guy on the mound, Sean Newcomb, who's the number 46 prospect, is a flamethrower from the left side, and we got him when we traded Andrelton Simmons to the Angels. I think he's a real exciting prospect. He started off slow in the minors, but wound up leading his league strikeouts to 152 while only walking 71. So he looks like another exciting one to be coming up, but I expect both of them to make it to the majors within the next year or two.
So are there any Braves prospects you're watching as they play this fall in the Arizona Fall League?
Yeah, I think Ozzie was originally going out there, and now he's hurt and won't be able to play, but there's another second baseman by the name of Travis Demerit, and he is a second baseman with some pop. We got him from the Texas Rangers. We traded Lucas Harrell over there in the middle of the season. He actually hit 28 home runs this season in the minors while hitting 266. So he gives a little bit of a different style than Ozzie Albies. So it'll be interesting to see how we use him, because there's also been thoughts of possibly moving him over to third base. But then again, we have Rio Ruiz there, so it'll be interesting to see how he plays this fall and into the spring training.
Right, and power hitting has been one of the issues the Braves have had. If there were any issues with the farm system, there hasn't been too much power that they've acquired. So it'll be interesting to see it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. So last weekend, the Braves gave reliever Jim Johnson, they gave him a 2-year contract extension, and both Jim and the Braves said he's expecting to close out games next year. Well, you have flamethrowers Mauricio Cabrera and Arodys Vizcaíno in the bullpen as well. If you had to choose, which one would you want to close out games next year?
Well, we definitely saw Vizcaíno kind of shot with the closer's role earlier this year as well as last year, and him and Cabrera both have electric stuff, both throwing upper 90s into the 100s. Which is really what you want to see out of a closer. They both got the stuff. They're just really young, and Jim Johnson is a proven winner. He's been around for a long time. So I think that's really what a young Braves team, especially with our pitching staff, needs, a veteran presence. So I feel like Jim Johnson is the right move for now. But it was a 2-year contract, so I'm guessing after those 2 years we'll either keep him on or we might be moving on to Vizcaino or Cabrera. But for now, Johnson, because this past year he won NL Player of the Week when he went four straight saves with 0 ERA, as well as he had the most strikeouts he's ever had this year. He got 68 strikeouts, about 50 innings, so he played pretty well this year, the best he's done in his career.
So, who should the Braves try to get in free agency? What positions should they look at this year to get ready for next year?
Yeah, well, I definitely think catching is a main priority for us. Ever since Brian McCann left, we've been switching through catchers, young guys, as well as old guys such as A.J. Brzezinski. I think that some names I've been hearing about are possibly Matt Wieters of the Orioles going after, as well as maybe trading back for Brian McCann. And those would be great to see Brian McCann come back. Matt Wieters would be great, switch hitting catcher who's one of the best defensive catchers in the league. And also, I've heard Russell Martin could possibly be a possibility trading for him from the Blue Jays. Would be another good bat to have in the lineup. I also think we need to go for a veteran pitcher. Like I was saying before, Jim Johnson, it's very important to have veterans on the staff with such a young team. And I think that possibly I've heard of Vaughn Nova of the Yankees might be an opportunity to come in there and be maybe our number 3 pitcher and help those young guys mature into their roles throughout the next year. And also third base is another priority for the Braves. Adonis Garcia has been there the past year and a half or so. He's been doing okay. He's been producing for us. But we definitely need someone maybe with a little more pop, a third power bat. So I was thinking maybe Justin Turner, who had a career year this year of the LA Dodgers, could be a pick. Or I've also heard Martin Prado we might be going after and bringing back. So that could be that as well. And we also have Austin Riley and Rio Ruiz coming up from the minors. So we have a lot of versatility we can play around with at third base also.
So what's your ideal starting rotation of the future? It can only contain players that are currently in the Braves system, whether it be the majors and the minors.
Yeah, well, I guess I'd have to start obviously with Julio. He's been around for the longest time as our starting opening day pitcher the past 3-4 years. He's definitely proven to the Braves that he's going to be sticking around for a while and could be an ace. He had a 7-10 record this year, which is not really indicative of how he pitched. He had a 3.21 ERA. He just couldn't get that much run support. Then I think I would have to go with Fulton. Fulton Anderson has been pitched really well at the end of the season. I remember his first start of this year, he came up and played against the Mets, and he gave up 3 homers in about 3 seconds. And that started looking bad for him. But then once he realized he could tone down that fastball a little bit to find his control better, he really started pitching well, and he ended the season with a 9-5 record. So I think I'm looking for great things from him next year and beyond. Third, I'd go with Matt Whistler. He proved himself last year and was named to the starting rotation this year. He pitched really well in the beginning half. Just all of a sudden just fell apart for him, and he didn't win about 10 or 11 straight decisions. He didn't win. So he got sent back to the minors and learned there a little bit, and I'm excited for him to come back because I really think he can be a solid number 3. And then after that, for a fourth, I would either go with Sean Newcomb or Colby Allard. Just 2 left-handers, both recently drafted. And they're both young guys who can throw hard. I definitely think they could come on. I still need to see exactly what they can do. They haven't had too much experience yet. And then lastly, I'd say Ian Anderson. I'd love to see what the Braves' number 3rd overall pick could do in this past year's draft. He's only pitched 3 games, but he's got 5 games, but he's got 1 and 2. In the minors, so I'm expecting to see a little bit more out of him, and it'll be really exciting to see him come up as well.
And most of those pitchers you mentioned they're young, so I have to bring the question, would you think that if the Braves could get a good deal for Julio Teheran, would you trade him?
I guess it would depend on the package as well. The Braves have had the past couple of years we've done good getting prospects and trading our high-value players. If we could trade Julio Teheran, I would definitely want someone in return who could help the ball club immediately, whether that be pitching or possibly a third or catcher position. But the package would definitely have to be right to trade Julio because he's definitely our ace going into next year.
So you were talking about the catching situation. You think that we'll get something from free agency, whether it be Brian McCann? Would you go with Brian McCann, or would you try to wait it out and get by with Tyler Flowers next year?
Tyler Flowers did well for us last year. he produced at a decent rate until he got hurt. Tyler Flowers is a good catcher, but I feel that for the Braves to go to that next level, they need a bigger player who can help get these young pitchers through a regular season. And Tyler Flowers has been around, and he's a veteran. And he has worked alongside Chris Sale and all of them also when he was with the White Sox. But I think that we should go for maybe a bigger bat just to help the ball field as a whole. And I think maybe going after a McCann or a Leaders would be a good call or Tyler Flowers.
And there's not much catching talent in the farm system right now, so maybe they need to find somebody younger that they can develop.
Yeah, definitely. We just drafted a guy this past year in the second round, but we have Lucas Herbert, who is also a second-round pick. He is our top-rated catcher. He's number 26 overall on the Braves prospects. He's a good fielding catcher, but his hitting is not good at all. He only hit 185 last year in 96 games. And so, like you were saying, the Braves definitely need to find some young talent behind the backstop position as well. We could also go out and find it also.
So we're going to finish up. Who do you think should manage the Braves in 2017 and potentially beyond that? Do you think Brian Snitker earned himself the job, or should the Braves look elsewhere?
Yeah, I definitely think Brian Snitker did a great job this year. He came on at the beginning of the season when the Braves had that just horrendous start. They had to fire Freddie Gonzalez. He came on and weathered the storm. He really did well, and I think he'd be a great pick to stay on. He's been with the organization for a really long time. He knows it from top to bottom. He's worked in the minors. He's worked on the major league level. So he's definitely known very well and respected around the organization. So he'd be great to stay. But so other names I've been hearing are possibly Bud Black, who was the manager for the San Diego Padres from 2007 to 2015. And he had a managerial record of 649 and 713, which is an okay record. But I think he'd be a good fit for us as well. But I think Brian Snitker might be a little better than his choice. And then Ron Washington also is a name that was thrown out there. He was a former manager for the Texas Rangers, and I think he would be a really good fit. He's a young, he's an energetic guy. He would work well with the young guys, as well as when he was with the Rangers, he brought them to those two back-to-back World Series, 2010 and 2011. Didn't come away with the win, but he still was able to bring his team there, consistently bring his team to the playoffs. So I think Ron Washington would be a great pickup for the Braves to have a manager next season.
So who are you rooting for in this MLB postseason? The wild card games are over, so you've limited your choices now. Who would you pick to win?
Well, I guess I have to say I'm rooting for the Indians, just because they've got a lot of really young talent as well as some good quality pitching, which is kind of what the Braves are working towards. So it's definitely good to see a good, energetic young team running around up there, being their first time in the playoffs in a couple of years. And then, I mean, also the Cubs would be awesome to see win and break their streak. So I'd say I have an AL and an NL team, and if they both met in the World Series, I'd have to go for the Cubs because I just want them to see them break that streak.
And what's the best way for Braves fans to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So I work for the Sport Talk app as well as the website. The best way to connect would be to go on to the App Store and download our app. We're basically a social media site for sports fans, so like a Facebook or Twitter for sports. We cover football, basketball, both pro and college, and then MLB and AHL. We have a wall for each team and for each league for fans to talk about the team or around the game or rumors, etc. And that also any fan can publish a blog from any of their walls, or they can check the schedule for any live scores as well. And that's on our website as well as on our app on the iTunes Store.
Drew, we enjoyed talking with you today, and we hope to talk to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
So that was some great stuff there from Drew Collins. Again, he's from SportTalk.com. You can find him there. Or you can find him on Twitter, @BravesSportTalk. So, anything that Braves that he didn't cover exactly, Luke? By the way, Luke is with us today. He's been with us. He hasn't been with us for a few weeks, but he is here today. Luke, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm glad to be back and on the show, ready to talk a little bit about the Braves here and then get into some football later on.
So what are your first thoughts of the Braves? The season's over now for them, but the offseason's just getting started. What do you think we could see?
Well, I think it was a very successful season. The team made some moves in the season, trades, getting some prospects out of veterans that were performing well. I think that was a plus in terms of getting players and building for the future. Now, also, in terms of building for the future, brought up Dansby Swanson. We saw some Malik Smith, Rio Ruiz towards the end of the year. And I think that was really good to get those guys some experience. And next year, I don't expect them to be contending for a playoff spot, but they'll be knocking out some teams, and I think we might see the first 500 record in a couple of years, and I think that's going to be a big step forward.
That would definitely be huge to get a 500 record next year. Even to stay somewhat in contention all the way through August, not to be eliminated like we were this year early on, to give fans a reason for hope later on in the season.
Yeah, and to achieve that 500 record, the Braves, they've had the hitting, especially as soon as the Braves got Matt Kemp, brought up Dansby Swanson, made moves like that. The hitting was good. What wasn't good is the pitching. And, speaking of pitching, the Braves declined their option on Roger McDowell, so basically they fired him there. So we'll get into that right now. And just kind of talk about what he meant to the Braves team and maybe why they let him go.
Well, he's been there for how long? 11 years, I think it was?
Yeah, 11 years.
So it's been a long time. Usually the Braves, the cornerstone of their franchise has been pitching, and it's expected to be pitching going forward. The offensive outbreak this year was a little bit unexpected on my part. I didn't expect it to come. But pitching, we just need to develop the young pitchers, and I don't know if the Braves thought that Roger McDowell was the right guy to develop all the pitching. And obviously the front office, John Hart, they didn't think that he was the right guy, and they will find somebody better, I hope.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think McDowell is the right guy for these young pitchers, and the Braves organization, they shared my opinion. I've always had thoughts to myself about Roger McDowell, but I never thought he was an issue. Now, I see why they did this. Roger McDowell, like I said, I don't think he's the guy, and they don't want to take a chance because the Braves have prospects in the lower levels that'll be coming up pretty soon. Mike Soroka, Fried, Toussaint, Muller, Ian Anderson, the third overall pick, Sean Newcomb, all these guys coming up, and they don't want Roger McDowell to ruin them. And there are some people, according to news reports in the Braves organization, that feel like McDowell had a part in Aaron Blair, Matt Whistler, and Tyrell Jenkins not having good seasons as young pitchers. And I can see why. Everyone that knows McDowell well will tell you that he was he was a tough love guy, and his approach was sometimes intimidating to the younger pitchers. So, if he's intimidating them, I don't know if that's a good thing, and it's just taking a little bit too long to develop those highly touted arms. And the Braves just don't want to take a chance on those guys coming up later. So that's the logic behind it. I agree with it. Frankie, what do you think?
Well, I'm kind of torn about this one. Because, like I said, he's been there for a long time, and traditionally the pitching hasn't really been that bad until recently when we got rid of all of the players and we started the rebuild. The pitching is actually dating back to the 90s, but he wasn't there then. But the pitching has been the cornerstone, like I said. And the hitting has been the offense has been struggling more than the pitching has in recent years. But I do see the other side of it. He may not be the right guy for all these young kids that 19 and 20 and they're ready to come up to the big leagues. He may not be the right guy to develop them. Maybe he would be better in the role of helping them once they're already established. But the Braves don't have that luxury right now with established arms. The only one they have is Julio Teheran. So maybe we could see that side of things as well.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about his career accomplishments. He was known as a very good guy and kind of reworking the veterans, getting with them so that they can maybe get their career back and get back on the right track. 3 key guys, Aaron Harang, who we saw a couple years ago, he was signed right at the end of spring training, right before the season was coming to start. Harang had a great month of April. His ERA was like .7 to start up the year. Ended up having a good season. And another recent example would be Bud Norris. That was this year, and they were able to flip him. Got 2 prospects from the Dodgers, and that was a good thing. Norris was having some terrible years, and then McDowell, after a few bad starts, was able to fix him. And the guy who's still on the team, he just got that 2-year extension. He talked about it in the interview with Drew, Jim Johnson. And he basically owes most of his money that he earned to Roger McDowell because he's the guy that fixed Jim. When Jim Johnson got out to L.A. after the Braves traded him last year, he absolutely fell apart. But when he came back to Atlanta to play 2016, he was good. He's a good player. McDowell got him back on track. There were more trade rumors about Jim, but the Braves decided to keep him, and that was really the smart move. So those are 3 success stories for McDowell.
Right, and now Jim Johnson, like you heard in the interview, he's in a position now to be the closer next year for the Braves. And maybe for the next 2 years, and if he does well, he's obviously getting a little bit older than some of the other young pitching that we have in the bullpen, but he could stick around for a few more years.
Yeah, and more about those young arms as we kind of wrap this topic up. McDowell was Tehran's only pitching coach, and Tehran has blossomed. He's a 2-time All-Star now. McDowell finally got him to stop throwing that cutter pitch, and he's been on fire, having great years. These 2 of the past 3 years have been very good for him. And this is what really worried those front office guys that ended up not picking up that option on McDowell. Aaron Blair, Matt Whistler, Tyrell Jenkins. I mentioned them earlier. It's just in the minors in Gwinnett, their ERA has been great. They come up to the majors. You don't expect them to keep the success, but they just haven't gone anywhere. They haven't stepped forward. And that's just something that they have to figure out with them without having to send them back to Gwinnett to AAA pitching. Because that uses up the options, and then it puts the front office in some bad places. But eventually, all in all, I agree with the decision. I like it. But it just depends on who they hire as the next pitching coach to really decide if this is a good move or a bad move. Bud Black might be the guy at manager. Then, if he is, I still think Snickers should be the manager. And,
I agree.
Yeah, and
100%.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But, if Bud Black ends up being the manager, I think he's in a good spot there. And whoever he brings in as pitching coach, if he were to be manager again, then, it would have to be someone good with young pitching in order for this move to be successful. If it's not, I consider failure. I think most of the writers, most of the people around the Braves organization, the fans, everybody will consider it, this is not a good move because if you're going to fire someone, you have to find someone better. That's all.
So we're going to move on from the topic of pitching, but we're going to move on to the off season. What we could possibly see this off season. I think the Braves said their goal was to get a catcher and 1 or maybe 2 starting pitchers for next year. So, Luke, who are some possibilities we could see?
Well, see, the catching market is where I want to start going with this. The top catching free agents, I don't think the Braves are going to be able to sign just because they want to go to a winning organization automatically, even though the Braves could maybe try to win 1 or 2 of them over. But I don't know if they're going to want to spend the money on them. So I could see the Braves signing a stopgap catcher, kind of like Tyler Flowers was last year. They're not going to bring back A.J. Pierzynski. That's, it's impossible. But they're going to find someone else that's just a decent catcher. You can get him for maybe $5 to $10 million a year for 1 or 2 years. I think that would be a good idea. And then also maybe trying to swing a trade for a minor league catcher in Double-A. A mid-level prospect, like a B-grade prospect. I think that would be a good move.
There's not much catching talent. We did get one catcher, don't we?
Yeah,
we drafted one.
We drafted one in Brett Cumberland. I believe that was the number 76 overall pick. We traded for one during the season. That was the Eric Ivar trade where we got Cade Shavik, the catcher from Detroit. Those guys are lottery tickets. I like it, but I think I just want one more lottery ticket. Maybe instead of the regular lottery, like a Mega Millions ticket where you've got a shot to go really big if you were to hit on this prospect. I think that would be good. Also, Brian McCann could maybe be an option.
That would be an interesting move maybe to get some more people to come to the games next year, although they shouldn't have too big of a problem with that moving into the new SunTrust Park.
Yeah, Brian McCann would be a good option. In my opinion, I would love it if Coppolella could just go Markakis for McCann straight up, get him from New York. And just kind of deal with that. Have McCann be the stopgap. And if a younger guy can make it to the major leagues while McCann is with the Braves, I think he's a great mentor, a great kind of almost a coach at this stage in his career to help the guys out. I just think that's a move where you can't go wrong.
And then you mentioned trading Nick Markakis. The outfield will be a little crowded next year if they were some way to keep him around. You've got Matt Kemp in left, or they might move him back to right. You've got Ender and Ciarte in center, and you got Malik Smith, who will come back, we assume, next year if he's not traded or anything happens to him, if he gets healthy. So, are there any chances, do you think, that Nick Markakis, what will happen if he were some way, somehow, stick around?
Well, if Nick Markakis has to stick around, I think someone has to go. Ender's staying there. He's one of those guys that's untradeable, kind of like Julio Teheran and Freddie Freeman. I think he's kind of joined the club where he's now a part of the Big Three. Ender's not going anywhere. I highly doubt it. And if he does go somewhere, it's like when the Braves traded Shelby Miller. They're getting like 2 or 3 pieces equivalent to Ender and Ciarte. And honestly, no one is that dumb in the MLB. Dave Stewart's gone. He's not the general manager for Arizona anymore. They fired him. So, that's a good thing for that organization. I'm happy for the Diamondbacks, but Ender's not going anywhere. Malik should not be going anywhere. The Braves, I don't think, should deal any of their top prospects right now unless they're getting someone like maybe Andrew McCutchen from the Pirates. Outside of that, Kemp, there's no way they're going to be able to trade his contract.
Not now.
Yeah, not with his age. So Markakis is the guy. He's just so consistent. He's an attractive option for a lot of teams, whether they're in contention or not. Could also be part of a salary deal where we just get rid of him because it's a position of depth, and then maybe take back even more salary or get a prospect and a good bit of salary. John Coppolella is a genius. I've thought that for a little while now. And he will find a way to shed Nick Markakis' salary if he so chooses and thinks that's the right path.
And so we're going to move on while we finish up this Braves segment. The manager situation. Brian Snitker is technically still the interim manager. They have not named a primary manager yet, but we have some candidates for you.
Yeah, it's been narrowed down according to John Heyman to Brian Snitker. He's the favorite. Also Bud Black, as we talked about earlier, Ron Washington, and no one else is really involved. That's the big 3 right here. Just a little bit about each of them. Ron Washington is currently the Athletics third base coach, and Bud Black is the former Padres manager. You've probably heard that name before. He was there from 2007 to 2015. His record was .649 and .713, but that was mostly due to lack of talent, not lack of talent as a manager, lack of talent that he was given.
So real quickly, and then we'll finish up. I think that Brian Snitker should be the manager for next year. What he's done with the talent and the players that he has jumping in the situation in the middle of the season, he's done well. He brought the team over 500 the second half of the season. And, I don't really think that there's anything they can do different. I would not agree Bud Black or Ron Washington or really anybody else. And you even had the players, like you may have heard in our interview from, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe last week, with Steve Epstein from Atlanta Baseball Talk. He said that the players have been lobbying for him almost the whole year now, ever since he came up. And then even Bobby Cox, 2 weeks ago, near the end of the season, came on air on the Braves pregame show and was lobbying for him as well. So the feeling seems to be that he is possibly the leading candidate for right now.
Yeah, Snitker's got to be the guy. If the players like him, if Bobby Cox likes him, that's a step forward there for Snitker. He's got so much experience. I think it's over 40 years in the Braves organization and professional baseball. He's got it all down. The thing that sticks with me is one time he went on the field, I was at the game, and he got ejected after a bad call from the umpire. And he just said he needed something to spark his team, and he decided that if he went out there, argued for his guys, and got ejected, that would be the correct spark under his team. And the Braves ended up winning that game in the 9th inning. And I think just the guy that knows what to do to get his team fired up to play, I think he's got to be the guy. Managers don't, in my opinion, make that big of a difference between wins and losses. But if a guy can do what he can to try to win games for his team and just make that minor difference that ends up being a major difference, I think that guy has got to be it. Those other 2 candidates to me are not very appealing, so I'm going with Snitker.
Agreed. And so the offseason, we'll keep you updated if any big major trades happen, if Nick Markakis or anybody else for that matter gets traded. The Braves still rebuilding. They're in phase 2 though, and we'll be excited to see what happens next April in SunTrust Park. So we're going to move on to some football now. We'll start off with the Falcons. They played today. They played up a mile high in Denver. They played the reigning Super Bowl champion and undefeated Denver Broncos.
Yeah, the defense was the story. So let's start with them. They had 6 sacks, an interception. They only allowed 16 points to a pretty good Denver offense, even though their starting quarterback was rookie Paxton Lynch. The defense was able to punch out 2 fumbles and also tackled the guys in the backfield, had 4 tackles for loss. The guys were all over the place. It was awesome, especially my guy, Vic Beastly. He is amazing. Today played a great game, 3.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, tackled for loss, 8 tackles, 2 quarterback hits. Paxton Lynch is going to be having nightmares about this guy. Beasley had a great game.
So, the defense really stepped up. The talk has been about the offense. The offense. They scored 48 points, I think it was, last week, 45 the week before. And you may have read our article that I wrote about the offense. It was before this game against the New Orleans Saints, talking about how they could be good this year, what needs to happen. And it's really come together. The offensive line, the wide receivers, everybody has come together. And you may notice Julio Jones 1 week has no catches, 1 week has 1 catch. Then he has 300 yards last week. And then he's back today. He's had a pretty quiet day today.
Yeah, 2 receptions for 29 yards. This offense does not need Julio to succeed. They need him to be on the field, though, as a decoy, just sucking up that double coverage from the defensive backs of Denver, who are some of the best in the land. And you laid out in your article, I love your article, it was awesome, but you laid out everything that needs to happen for the offense to be good. Everything you said that needs to happen is happening right now. Alex Mack has made the difference on that offensive line. Running backs, receivers producing. Matt Ryan is making smart decisions. Kyle Shanahan has made adjustments and been more flexible with the guys that he has. It's all working. It's awesome.
So, lots of people, they haven't really been too happy the past few years with Kyle Shanahan, but I think that part of it, he just didn't have all the pieces. We're starting to see now. He's made a few adjustments, but I think a lot of it, you finally have a running game that you can be. You have not just one running back in Devontae Freeman. You have Tevin Coleman as well, who can carry the load if need be. You also have Matt Ryan, who's been the franchise quarterback now for, 9 years or so?
Something like that. Yeah, I think that's right.
8 years, 9 years. And he hasn't had this much of a supporting cast in a long time, if ever. The only team that I think could maybe rival this one was the one that went to the NFC Championship in 2012, and that they lost to the San Francisco 49ers there. But this team has the makings to possibly go that far.
Yeah, I think they can go farther. Even though the defense has been a little bit of a problem, they showed up today.
Showed improvement.
Yeah, even though the opponent may not have been at the top of their game, I know a rookie quarterback starting is a big deal. I understand that. But it's a stepping stone for this defense. Now, after allowing only 16 points, they're getting up there and they're taking a step. Now they've got more confidence, even though they had pretty much their entire starting linebacking group hurt. They had Spoon out. They had all those guys. Leroy Reynolds was starting. Philip Wheeler got lots of playing time. Stuff like that. They were able to step up. The defense basically won the game. The offense, the over-under on points was something like 24, and they were under just because of the nature of this Denver defense. So, offensive top performers, Devonta Freeman, 23 carries, 88 yards and a touchdown, and Tevin Coleman had an okay day running, 31 yards, but receiving is where he earned his money today. 132 yards and a touchdown on 4 receptions. He's just been explosive. Also caught that 31-yard touchdown pass. So he's done a really nice job.
Right, and the offense has been really balanced. Not just, throwing the ball to Julio Jones like some people expected. You've also been working in the running game. The running backs catching the ball out of the backfield, like you've seen with Tevin Coleman. He's turned into more of a passing receiver, reception running back or whatever, just because that's who he is. You got Devontae Freeman that'll just run the ball up the middle and do his job there. And it adds an extra fold to this offense.
Yeah, Mohamed Sanu, our $32 million man, had 1 more catch than Julio. He had 3, and he had 43 yards receiving. He outperformed Julio, but that's because he wasn't facing his tough coverage. But he adds that extra balance to the offense as a receiver. And also the running backs lined up at receiver a lot today to catch passes. More so Tevin Coleman than Devonta Freeman, but I still saw Freeman out there a couple times. And I think Shanahan is really, I don't know what's happened with him, but he has gone from being one of the guys I dislike the most to one of the guys that's like, okay, I see what you're doing, Kyle. That's pretty cool there. Just doing a lot of interesting stuff, being innovative, designing new plays, and to me it's just really impressive how much he's improved as a coordinator.
And both sides of the ball, offense and defense, They'll both get a test next week when they head up to Seattle. The Falcons play the Seattle Seahawks on the road. That'll be a very interesting game. It's always tough to play up in Seattle in their stadium, so.
Yeah, it's such a tough environment. That stadium, I don't know if you out there saw this, but ESPN a couple years ago did an edition on how the stadium was designed to trap noise in there and make it so loud when the crowd is cheering, and that's the true definition of home field advantage. So that might mean you see more no huddle from the Falcons, so they don't have to really communicate with each other as much, just because it'll be so loud, so hostile. It's going to be kind of like when they played in Oakland, except maybe even tougher depending on the Seattle crowd, which I'm sure will be strong as it always is.
So we'll be looking forward to see what happens next week for that one. But for now, we're going to move on to some college football. We're going to start off with the University of Georgia. Their game was moved from last night until this afternoon because of Hurricane Matthew, which went up and hit Columbia, South Carolina really hard, and the Dogs played the Gamecocks today.
Yeah, UGA rebounded. They won 28-14 in case you didn't catch it. Also, one thing I want to mention on Twitter, we did a live tweet today of the Falcons and the Georgia game. So if you can't catch the game, if you're not watching it, but you have your phone and your Twitter app, you can always catch up on our tweets. We'll tweet touchdowns, turnovers, quarterly updates. So, we did that one. The UGA had a good game today, but Jacob Eason did not. He was 5 for 17, 29 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. His quarterback rating was 6. Not 60, it was 6. That is pathetic. But the running game carried the team. So
they did today. They had, Sony Michel's 21 carries, 133 yards. He was the leading rusher. Nick Chubb is still coming off of that ankle injury. Nick Chubb, he had 16 carries, which is a decent workload. He had 121 yards, so that's two backs over 100 yards. And then Brian Harrigan, the freshman, he had 82 yards as well, which is, it would have been incredible if he had gotten the next 18 yards to get over 100. To have three running backs over 100 yards, that would have been pretty special. But it was not to be, but he came pretty close. Then Isaiah McKenzie, 2 receptions, 15 yards, and a touchdown, which was key. Yeah,
those were the UGA top performers of the day. It's pretty bad when your leading receiver has 15 yards. Eason was overthrowing guys, making those freshmen mistakes, but I'd rather let him get those out against a pretty easy defense, while the running game just annihilated South Carolina. They had no solution for our guys in our offensive line. So that's another place where you're playing weaker competition as a team, but you're building on top of that. You've got more confidence now. Maybe you figured something out as a team, and now you can move forward and take it to these tougher games and just go forward and try to just get better.
In Georgia, they'll have a break next week. Not a break, but it's a conference game. They play Vanderbilt. So we'll have to see how that one goes. Vanderbilt will wake up, they can be known to give Georgia some trouble. You might remember in the past several years.
That was embarrassing.
We'll have to see what happens with that one. But we're going to move on to Georgia Tech right now. So they lost 37-34 to Pittsburgh on a field goal as time expired. We did give you live updates on the end of that one as well. We didn't do the whole game, we did the fourth quarter. You can go back and look at those. You can always follow us on Twitter at ATL Sportscasts. So they were up 34-27. So we'll have to see what happens with that one.
Yeah, so we'll move on, go forward a little bit. Talk about Georgia State. They got their first win of the season, improved their record to 1-4. Now they're 8th ranked in the Sun Belt. Their next game is at Troy. So they won their game. They played Texas State. The score was 41-21, a good game. And some top performers there. Their passer, Connor Manning, was 27 for 40. Had a lot of passing attempts as they normally do. Threw for 2 touchdowns. The running back, Kyler Neal, had 13 carries for 89 yards and a touchdown. Good day for him. And Robert Davis, really the all-around top performer for this entire game. 9 receptions, 149 yards, and a touchdown. And he caught a 55-yard pass. So he really did a great job. On the defensive side of the ball, McKindy Cherador had 7 tackles and 2.5 sacks, 3.5 tackles for loss. So he was camped out in that Texas State backfield. Defense as a whole, 2 interceptions. They forced a fumble. Only allowed 21 points. Had 4 sacks and 6 tackles for loss. So a good day statistically and also just overall a good day for that entire team.
And, something that they've been much improved on this week, they had 196 total rushing yards to the team. We've been talking about how their rushing attack has not quite been up to speed. Well, they got up to speed this time. Didn't quite get the 200-yard mark, which is, you might like to see them do that. But they were able to split up their carries among lots of players. I think it was one. They had 6 guys carry the ball for positive yards, which is something you always look for, spreading the ball around, having a balanced offense. But, it was good to see them finally move the ball around a little bit and not be able to just be one-dimensional with the passing attack, but now they're able to run the ball too, which is just adding another fold to their offense.
Yeah, you mentioned them spreading the ball around. They threw to 7 different receivers as well, and that's just a job well done by their quarterback, looking around past his first and second option, getting to maybe the third or fourth guy, and just doing whatever they can to get that positive yardage, and it all turned into their first win of the season, so all their hard work is finally paid off, and they're on the right track.
And like we said, they play at Troy. They are 1-4 in the season, so if they're going to get to a bowl game, which is their ultimate goal this year, is to get to 6-6, they're going to have to win 5 games of their next 7.
It's really not too out of the realm of possibility. Their schedule's not too tough going forward here, but some good wins against Troy and others would be good. But again, first things first, you have to beat Troy.
All right, so we're going to move on to Georgia Southern. So they played on Wednesday. They lost to Arkansas State 27-26 in heartbreaking fashion. Arkansas State scored a touchdown with 9 seconds left. They threw a pass in the corner of the end zone. It's definitely tough for Georgia Southern fans to see that one.
Also tough for Georgia fans that watched the Georgia Southern game. 2 weeks in a row with a Hail Mary ending your hopes of winning.
So they won a turnover margin, interestingly enough. They forced 5 turnovers, and they only scored 26 points off of them total. I don't know if they were all turnovers, but they didn't have a single turnover themselves, which is something you'd like to see out of any team. But you'd hope that if you force 5 and win 5-0, the turnover margin, you'd get more points off of those. So that's something to look for going forward. They got outgained 525-365. And actually this time again, Georgia Southern, they threw the ball more than they did rushing it. They had 203 passing yards, which is something that we're not used to seeing from them. Kevin Ellison, 14 for 22 with the 203 passing yards and 1 touchdown. He also added 17 carries and 25 yards rushing. And then L.A. Ramsby, 6 carries, 68 yards, 1 touchdown. And then Matt Breda, 10 carries, 42 yards. And then Wesley Fields also tacked on 12 carries and 27 yards. So they only scored 2 touchdowns. Their kicker, Young-Ho Koo, was 4 for 4 with field goals. He had a 53-yarder, which was his long. So they're depending heavily on their kicker, which is something you may not want to see too much. You might want to score more points offensively rather than rely on your special teams. He was also 2 for 2 extra points. So Georgia Southern, they need to score more points, 26 points. You'd hope that you'd win the game there. Their defense also could use a little bit of work. But they get to play Georgia Tech this week. It'll be interesting. I still think they got a shot at winning this one. I mean, what do you think, Luke?
Yeah, Tech's got to watch out. Georgia Southern gives everyone their best. I would know. I was at that Georgia versus Georgia Southern game last year, and I got to admit, sitting in my seat, I was pretty scared because it's like, well, if Georgia Southern beats UGA, how am I going to live with this with all the Georgia Southern fans talking trash for the next year until they play Georgia Southern again? So Tech's going to have to deal with this too, Tech fans, and they just got to watch out. I mean, you have to be prepared for this Georgia Southern team, or else you could run into some serious trouble. They're not kind of like Vanderbilt, how Georgia's taking Vanderbilt right now, how it's kind of almost a bye week where you can just kind of ride through and get out with another number in the win column. But Georgia Tech's just got to be careful. I think, they should win. Georgia Tech should win, and they just got to get out there, finish the drill, and play every minute, every down to the best of their ability and just win the game.
All right, so briefly we're going to talk a little bit about Kennesaw State. They beat Missouri S&T 49-16. Chandler Burks 2 for 6 passing for 73 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns on 29 carries. True option quarterback there. Kennesaw State has to play Liberty next week. So the Owls are 4-1 on the season. Like I said, they play Liberty, And then after that, they move on and they have the rest of their schedule, which I think is manageable. They could win several more games. I think the toughest opponent will be Charleston Southern, which is at the end, which will be interesting to see.
Yeah, really will be. I think 9 or 10 wins would be really nice for this Kennesaw State team. Get in the win column, just have a lot to talk about as a team. Say, hey, we're in double-digit wins or 9 wins. You're close to it. So I think if they can hit that, that'll be good. And I think they've got a good shot at it with the schedule they have remaining.
All right, so I think that brings us to the end of our show today. Thank you for listening to us, the Atlanta Sports Podcast. Remember, you can find us on iTunes, on Stitcher, Google Play. We also have a YouTube channel. You can find us there as well. You can find us on our website, atlantasportspodcast.com. You can comment to us there on our podcast, on any of our blog posts. You can also comment or leave us a review in iTunes. We greatly appreciate that. Tell us how we're doing. And remember to spread the word of mouth. That's one way. If you know anybody that likes Atlanta sports, the Falcons, the Braves, or any of the college teams around, let them know about us. We greatly appreciate it. And we hope to see you next week with another show.